gentlemen, dare to dream that the dawn is breaking on an independent, united kingdom. If the predictions now are right, this will be a victory for real people, a victory for ordinary people, a victory for decent people.
BREXIT is a word that has become used as a shorthand way of saying the UK leaving the EU, merging the word Britain and exit to get Brexit, in the same way as the possible exit from the euro was the Brexit in the past. A referendum, a vote in which everyone or nearly everyone of voting age can take part, was held on Thursday, 23 June 2016, to decide whether the UK should leave or remain. Leave won by 51.9% to 48.1%. The referendum turnout was 71.8%,
The European Union, often known as the EU, is an economic and political partnership involving 28 European countries. It began after World War II to foster economic cooperation with the idea that countries would trade together amicably to avoid going to war with each other. It has since grown to become a single market, allowing goods and people to move around, basically as if the member states were one country. It has its own currency, the euro, which is used by 19 of the member countries, its own parliament, and it now sets rules in a wide range of areas, including on environment, transport, consumer rights, and even things such as mobile phone charges.
Talks are currently taking place on three aspects of how Brexit will work, focusing on how much the UK owns the EU, and what happened to the Northern Ireland border, and what happened to the UK citizen living elsewhere in the EU and the EU citizen living in the UK. The UK wants to talk about future trade relations and the plan for a 2-year transition period to smooth the way to spoil Brexit relations. But the EU say they will not talk about the future until enough progress has been.
The UK has been a part of the EU since 1973 and decided to remain a member state after a referendum in 1975. So why does the UK want to leave the EU?
Well, former Prime Minister David Cameron has said that the EU imposes too many restrictions on British lawmakers, which says that the UK will be forced to abandon its past currency and adopt the euro currency, which has historically been the weaker of the two. Adoption of the euro is expected on EU countries by the year 2020, but many are worried that the euro is not only unstable, but able to be influenced by weaker countries like Greece.
The UK is also concerned about European restrictions imposed on the immigration laws.
The EU currently provides the ability for migrants to access employment and benefits. However, the British Prime Minister has been working to restrict benefits and housing to those who has been in the country for at least 4 years.
This proposal has been directly opposed by the European Commission, leading many Britons to question why the EU has so much say in British welfare.
Some conservative groups feel like Europe is manipulating the British government and that policymakers have lost control over trade, human rights, and migration. EU law is supreme over UK law, meaning that lawmakers in the British House of Commons are beholden to those in the European Parliament in Brussels.
Anti-EU activists believe that European regulations will undermine British interests.
Withdraw from the European Union is governed by Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union. Under the Article 50 invocation procedure, a member notifies the European Council and there is a negotiation period of up to 2 years after which the treaty ceases to apply. Thus, the UK is set to leave by April 2019 on the term of leaving may be agreed. At first, such a change may be difficult to negotiate until the UK had left the EU.
What is Article 50? Article 50 is a plan for any country that wishes to access the EU. It was created as part of the Treaty of Lisbon, an agreement set up to bind on EU states which became in law in 2009. Before the treaty, there was no formal mechanism for a country to leave the EU. It's very short, just 5 paragraphs.
Hello everyone, now I want to tell you about the effects of Brexit on the global economy. There is no roadmap to follow or analogy to invoke as a guide or pattern for how the Brexit vote will reverberate in the months and years to come. However, a few immediate consequences seem highly likely. First, the flight to safety away from the epicenter of this British EU divorce will push capital away from the region and toward key safe haven markets, including the US, especially Treasury, and to Japan. This will further lower markets' interest rates and raise relative currency values. Second, a higher US dollar and Japanese yen are negative to both economies' export sectors. In the case of Japan, this is particularly unhelpful to its effort to reinflate and reinvigorate the economy after decades of deflation. Third, the higher US dollars also trigger additional pressure on China to flow the yuan lower, as it is caught in the divergence between its two largest export markets, the EU and the US. Next, for the US, the negative impact on exports is relatively small compared with trends in domestic demand, but the deflationary pressure on tradable goods will widen the divergence between reasonably strong inflation in service sector versus reasonably strong deflation in the goods sector. Finally, the European Central Bank is compelled to raise its levels of intervention yet again, as risk premium across the region raised. Among the larger Eurozone members, Italy is a particularly vulnerable position, now made more vulnerable.
What are the consequences of Brexit and how they impact businesses in the UK? The UK is considered one of the best countries to start a business, but that could change due to the unknown effects Brexit could bring. So, how can Brexit affect businesses in the UK? You may be doing business in the UK, but most of your raw materials come from, let's say, Germany, for example. Since free trade between UK and EU will no longer be relevant, the cost of your supplies hike up. On the other hand, UK's export business may take a hit because of higher costs and tariffs. This is an effect that can be seen across the supply chain. For the UK, being a part of the single market has always been an attractive factor for foreign investors because it meant free trading across EU countries. If the UK decides to change its policies and not have access to the single market, then it could have potential impacts on FDI performance in the coming years. Although this is the analysis of most people, the pro-Brexit group has a different point of view. They are emphasizing on other factors, such as competitive edge and global supply chain connections, that make the UK an attractive destination for foreign investors. They believe strongly in the UK's ability to pull in investment will continue irrespective of Brexit.
In the long run, it is hard to say that the Brexit vote will negatively impact Vietnam trade as it largely depends on trade policy when the UK decided to split from the EU. There is reason to believe that the UK could make trade transformation from the EU to Asia, in which Vietnam with higher commercial connectivity could have opportunities to improve trade routes.
In June 2017, the Europe was done by Britain's vote to leave the EU. Few months later, the world was typified by Trump's victory on the United States presidential election. Not just that, the extreme nationalism is rising in many other countries such as France, Denmark, Spain, Philippines. So, is the populism is rising up again after the Second World War. The nationalism is a wonderful thing of a nation. It shows patriotism of a nation. But if it rises excessively, it will easily be a blind nationalism or populism. The one new trend after World War II is globalization for countries to develop stronger together and avoid going to war with each other. To try the trend, every citizen, every politician, every nation have to have the international spirit. To be steady on the international politics, we always retain the nationalism, but we also have to balance the national interest and the international interest. It's very important so that the country can hold its position and reputation firmly on the international politics.
Brexit teaches us many things about British society and about societies around the world. It highlights in many ways that we are unaware of how divided British in particular and Europe in general. But more profoundly, the vote teaches us something about the nature of politics today. Contemporary politics is no longer just about right and left. It's no longer just about tax and spend. It's about globalization. The foul line of contemporary politics is between those that embrace globalization and those that fear globalization.
Since Britain's vote to leave the European Union, the sky hasn't fallen, the work is spinning, but the country has a lot to look forward to with Brexit. Britain will finally be able to control its borders again. It no longer have to listen to matter some EU churches, nor will it need to obey the directives emanating from Brussels. Britain will be able to make its own laws, set its own taxes, and negotiate its own trade deals. In short, Britain will have one thing few European countries enjoy: the freedom to decide its own destiny. Since Britain's vote to leave the European Union, Britain remains part of the European continent, but the horizon is narrowing. The world is welcoming a great country that has chosen to make itself smaller. Before ending this video, I just want to leave a message. It's a familiar quote. When you feel like quitting, Think about why you started.